All right, guys, welcome back to the Spar Scene MMA Show. We're back. I'm here with my good friend and co-host Ducky, and today we're going over UFC 296. But before we get into that, as you guys can see, we were missing Brad, the third member of the Spar Scene MMA Show. He's actually out sick today. I don't know. We don't know how true that is, but yeah, he's sick. We hope he feels better. He'll be back soon. But yeah, like I said, guys, we're going over the UFC 296 coming up this weekend. Probably one of the biggest cards of the year. We got Colby Covington and Leon Edwards fighting for the welterweight belt, and then we got Alexandra Pantoja and Brandon Royval fighting for the flyweight belt. Then we got a stat card underneath that. So we're gonna go over the main card first, and maybe your thoughts at the end of the episode. So
Yeah,
let's kick it off.
it's a killer card. Honestly, everything on there is just stellar. And as much as, we miss having Brad here, he's telling everybody that he's sick. Where we live, we're getting a lot of outbreak of flu and RSV and COVID and all this stuff. But what he doesn't realize, okay, is that I've been slowly poisoning him for months so that I can get him off the show and steal all of his talk time and be even more selfish and arrogant. I'm just kidding, Brad. We love you. We hope you get better fast. But task at hand, working our way up this weekend's card. We're going to start at the bottom of the main card and kind of, wiggle our way upward. It's a huge match for positioning in the welterweight title picture in my mind, and just overall in the rankings, which to me, welterweight's in a weird state. It's a little stagnant. It's in this weird place where you have a lot of like aging action fighters. Like you've got Matt Brown and Brian Barberena and a lot of these guys that kind of like, they're still there, but we can see the writing in the wall. It's like, how many more fights do they have? Are they going to be legit contenders for the title at this point? No, he's still be in some great contests though. And here we have Vicente Luque versus Ian Garry at 170. And this is a huge fight. We've been talking about Ian Garry, but largely his, out of the ring stuff. Let's not forget, this dude is a savage. Okay. He's very fast. He's very slick. He's been down in Brazil working on his ground game as well. He's been saying that that's going to become a bigger part of what he's going to bring to the fight. Vicente Luque, though, has always had an underrated ground game. His Darce is incredible. If you look at what he did to Michael Chiesa with a nice little Darce setup. And Chiesa never expected it. He didn't think he was going to bring that heat. And, when I think about this fight, Vicente Luque was on a roll. And then he got derailed a little bit. And he has that comeback fight after, taking a pretty significant amount of time off. He said his brain was hurting him, which whenever I hear that about a fighter, I get very anxious. I don't like to hear that. But he came back to that Rafael dos Anjos fight, which is a 5-round decision. He did well. It's never easy to fight RDA. But one thing I did notice is that even at the advanced age that RDA is at, he was still pretty fast. And in a lot of ways, it might even be a little bit faster than Vicente. That's my concern on this fight. I've got a feeling that even though Vicente has the power, he's got to catch him. He's got to cut the cage off. He's got to learn to cut the cage off. Here, I really watch, when I see Ian Garry, I watch his footwork and I see a lot of speed, man. By the time he had rocked D-Rod with that head kick, he made connection and immediately hit him with a 3-piece before he even fell down. So here, I think speed's going to be the difference. I think Ian Garry is going to shut up the haters, at least, with a win here. But the problem is that press conference beforehand, are we feeling like he's going to get destroyed in that press conference? Where are you at on that, Simon?
Yeah, for the press conference, I'm pretty, before we get into the fight, well, my opinions on the fight, I'm definitely super excited for this press conference. I think everybody's going to try to target Ian Garry, but mostly Colby Covington. I don't know what he has up his sleeve for that. But who knows? Colby Covington might focus all his efforts on Leon Edwards. So I don't know how that's going to play out. But, I'm kind of hoping Ian gets a little crap from the fighters. I think it'll make it interesting.
Yeah. I think he's going to get a lot of shit.
Yeah. As far as the fight goes, I would have to agree with you 100%. I think Vicente Luque has taken so much damage, but he's still a good fighter. So he's wearing out a little bit. He's only 32 years old, so he's not super old. Like, he still has time to heal after these fights. But I I think this is a case of, Ian Gary's on the upcline, maybe not, in his publicity, but as a fighter, he's on the rise. He's coming up, and then Vicente Luque, like even though he's 32, it's just with all these fights he's had, I think he's slowly on the decline when it comes to his health, his fighting style. So it's not going to look good for Vicente Luque, in my opinion. But again, he does have all this experience, and who knows? I mean, he could come up with an upset. I got Ian Garry in this fight just because, as much as he is annoying, we know how talented he is, right? Like, even if you're an Ian Garry hater, you can admit this guy's a talented fighter. So I don't know. I mean, I think I'd get to agree. Maybe keep the distance, watch out for the leg kicks. But yeah, Vicente Luque, he can do that. He can play some defense. So yeah.
It's also a thing where we got a lot of guys right now that are undefeated. You've got the reign of Ian Garry. He's undefeated streak. We've got who just finished somebody this past weekend, Tatsuro Taira. He's an Asian prospect, dude. That guy is on fire. I think he just went to 15 or 16-0. And if we're thinking about it, man, we'll get to this. We're not going to jump ahead yet, but Shavkat Rakhmonov on the same card. I mean, the dude is 17-0 and all finishes. That's the difference with him, is like every fight's a finish. But that's kind of where Ian Gary's been. I mean, yes, he's been in some decisions and things, but fair amount of finishes. And, he's in that spot right now in this division where I'm not sure that there's a lot of high-level strikers that are able to fight him in that space. And when we get to the main event, we're going to talk about that a little bit. But there's a lot of grapplers at welterweight right now. It's like, look at Sean Brady, look at Bilal. They're kind of waiting in the wings, just like ready to just chain leg singles just together for 25 minutes. People might not want to see that, but I feel like that's where the division's headed a little bit. I don't know. Is that a fair assessment? Is it grappling heavy at welterweight?
Yeah, I would like to say so. It's tough, though, with Leon being predominantly a striker and winning off his striking. It's kind of hard to say that, but you got to remember who's underneath that, right? So I would have to agree, though.
Do you want to see that? Would you like to see Leon and Ian Garry?
Oh, yeah. I think definitely the striking matchups are perfect for that fight. And then also with the history they have with the gyms and, apparently Leon came out recently and said that he didn't knock him out, but he did give him a little taste of the Usman kick. So it basically means he did knock him out, in my opinion. He doesn't want to admit it. It's a fair play to both of them. I mean, that would be a great fight, especially in maybe like the O2 Arena or something, maybe in a couple of years. But I mean, we got to talk. We're going to move on to that soon, but that's if he gets through Colby, dude. So
it's a tall order. And speaking of some other UK fighters, I know we're talking about Leon, but my favorite Scouser from Liverpool, we've got Paddy Pimblett versus Tony Ferguson. Man, right now, Tony is putting on his vest, his suit. He's got his baseball gloves on.
Can't help but laugh
ready.
At this fight.
It's just one of my favorite clips he ever did. He was at a press conference. He was like, I'm a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. I'm Raphael. He's my favorite one. What's your favorite? He'll say the weirdest shit that you've ever heard in your life. The guy is hilarious. And honestly, as much as I would love to see him win this fight, I just don't think it's going to happen. I love Paddy in a lot of ways because I'm also a secret, just tubby boy in my heart. I'm a fat boy in my heart. It's a constant battle my whole life. And I love to blow up. I love holidays. I love, any opportunity to have some snacks, some snackadays. And I know when he's done with the fight, man, he's eating pizza, he's drinking Cokes, just drinking soda. He's doing all the things. But right now, he looks really dialed in. He does look good. His body looks good. This is my best case scenario, okay? Tell me if I'm tripping. This is my fantasy. Tony and Paddy go all 3 rounds, and it's a war. And Tony catches him and wobbles him and makes him bleed, hits him with elbows, almost finishes at Doris. But then the bell goes off and he escapes. And then Paddy comes back and has a momentum swing, starts to beat his ass, maybe takes his back and almost finishes him. But both guys have momentum swings and both guys look great. But maybe Tony loses by a really razor split decision, gets dropped at the last second and loses that way. I would love to see something like that where both guys come out elevated. Both guys come out, feeling like smelling like roses. It just seems lately, though, that the legends have not been getting that kind of send off. It's usually the
Nope.
opposite kind.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too, is that a lot of people are saying this is a lose-lose for Patty, right? He beats a legend. People are gonna still hate him. He's gotten a lot of hate recently for some of the shenanigans he's done. But if I was actually thinking the same thing you just said, I was gonna say, like, could this be a win for Patty if this is like a war, right? Like, could this elevate his status, make him likable again? Because let's not forget, like, he was super likable before this all happened. I mean, some people thought he was
Mhm.
annoying, but they never hated him. Then after he kind of did some of his shenanigans, he had that close loss with Jared Gordon. Just people there's a lot of hate towards him. So, I mean, in your opinion, do you think if this is a war, could that elevate him more than just like a dominant win in the publicity side of things, or through the fans?
Mhm. 'Cause it's goodwill. It's
Yeah.
that idea of, like, imagine, like, the image of, like, both the guys covered in blood and, like, maybe he gets
Mhm.
the announcement and then he still raises Tony's hand or something like that, and, like, the 2 of them together
Yeah.
like that. That's it gets my heart a little bit because what Tony sacrificed for us in this sport, I will always choose to remember him the way that I will choose to remember him, which is when he won the title, interim lightweight title against Kevin Lee with a perfectly locked in triangle.
Yeah.
That's the real Tony. I'll always remember that. He's a special guy. And you know what? The run that he went on, it just so happens that him and Connor and a lot of these guys came up at the time where Khabib was there. And
Mhm.
it's so hard to deal with the dominance of Khabib, man. The guy is just incredible in terms of never getting cut, never getting dropped. I mean, that's in this sport where there's so many ways to lose, it's hard to find so many ways to win.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I think Patty can come out of it smelling like roses as long as he doesn't get tone deaf in the response. Because remember with the Jared Gordon thing, like people thought he lost, and then he was, afterwards he seemed kind of like denying that it was even
Mhm.
close. Like he was not even
Yeah.
hearing it. And maybe if he had just like been like, you know what, I got some stuff I got to go back to the drawing board and improve on, people would have been like, you know what, okay, we'll cut your break. But instead, if you're just kind of like oblivious, eh,
Mm.
how do you see
Yeah.
it? If there's a finish, how do you see Patty finishing
Submission.
it?
I think it can be a lot like a submission. Yeah, just like the last fight Tony had against Bobby Green. I can see it kind of going like that, where Tony might show signs of being okay. Like maybe Patty's feeling the energy. Like maybe I shouldn't go super hard at the beginning. I mean, these guys are fighters, right? But they still have these feelings of like, okay, like all this adrenaline coming into the fight.
Mhm.
But Patty's been the public eye for so long. I think that he'll be fine with all the attention, all the adrenaline. But I do see it being a submission by Patty.
Maybe take his
Maybe he
back.
rocks Tony a few times, gets him down. Maybe he takes his back against the fence. Patty's been known to be pretty decent at that. I mean, Patty is
Mhm.
chinny, but I can see possibly getting Tony up against the fence with his striking and then kind of like hopping on his back and then boom, rear naked choke.
Mhm.
Or see. I don't know. That's my prediction though. Patty
That
by
was him,
rear naked
Levitt.
choke. Mhm.
Same way he took Levitt out.
Yep.
Same
That's what I
way.
was kind of envisioning. Yep.
It's just hard.
What about you?
It's hard to see your guys go. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
uh, I've been watching a little bit of tape on Tony lately. I watched the Bobby Green. I rewatched the Chandler fight. It's interesting, man. It's been 6 fights or something like this, and he's not won a round in a long time. And I mean, they had a good moments in the Michael Chandler fight in the first round. He looked okay. He dropped him at one point
Mhm.
with a jab, I believe.
Yeah, I
But
did.
you know, he's one of those guys, man, where his whole life, when he throws, his chin is right up there in the air. And it just so happens, like, if you fight with that style where you're using your versatility and your chin as a weapon,
Mm.
that's cool. But how crazy is it to think that he fought, Rafael dos Anjos in Mexico City at altitude like 3 years ago, destroyed him in a decision, just outpointed him on the feet. And now, after all these years, all this time logged in the cage, I think RDA is like number 3 for total strikes landed in the history of the UFC cage time. And right now, I pick RDA over Tony. It's so crazy
Mm.
after all these years,
Yeah.
man. Speaking of aging fighters, now this one's really going to hurt. This one's really going to hurt because Stephen Wonderman Thompson, I mean, I think it's okay to switch to Wonder Man at this point. He's still the Wonder Boy, I guess. But Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is actually from our neck of the woods, I believe. I think his dad's karate dojo is was it Anderson or something? Where's it at?
Simpson, like Simpsonville area, so around Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay. And you know, man, I've always been a huge fan, not only of how he fights, but how he conducts himself. That dude is one respectful, kind dude. And he's always gives people their just dues. He doesn't talk trash. He doesn't sell fights that way. He never did. Even when things were getting contentious with him and Tyron, they were always respectful with each other, which I really appreciated. But this one, if he can't keep Shavkat off of him, he's in deep shit.
Yeah.
There's nothing more to say. I mean, it's if he can use that like sidekick, maybe push him like that Vicente Luque fight with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. It was an interesting example. Like he used the sidekick, hit him with the solar plexus, would drop him, keep him away with that. But the question is, like, he's got to have enough firepower to stop Shavkat. If he can't stop Shavkat, he's just going to keep coming through and eat those shots on the way in. He'll eat it, what he has to eat, and then get to the clinch and then start working. You know, you think of that Jeff Neal submission. Ooh, yeah. He was like behind his back. But I mean, listen, we've been wrong before. You know, we've been all excited about Sean Strickland. Oh, Sean Strickland has no chance. Adesanya is going to destroy him. We all collectively bought into that. It was like Jungian subconscious. We all believed it, no matter what. Like the collective subconscious, we all just was like, no, that's it. But here's my question for you. Is Shavkat all that? Or did Jeff Neal expose that maybe he's not had like that kind of resistance, and that's why he's looked so damn good?
Yeah, that was going to be my first point, was there is hope. We did see the Jeff Neal fight. The first couple of rounds, a little shaky for Shavkat. So it showed that he wasn't, you know, this invincible guy that was going to just swipe through the division. So I think that's why Stephen Wonderboy took this fight. You know, he does see that there is weaknesses he can take advantage of. I don't think people realize that, you know, like Stephen Wonderboy, he could have fought pretty much anybody he wanted to, like not obviously for the belt, but, you know, he had his options. And this was, you know, a surprise to most people that he accepted this fight. But there's openings for him. We saw in the Jeff Neal fight. I don't think that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson's going to win, but I think we do see some holes in Shavkat's game. Maybe striking. Maybe this will show, you know, the division and other people, hey, Shavkat, he can strike. He's not just this crazy grappler. So I think that's what I want to see out of him this weekend. You know, I am leaning towards Shavkat winning the fight, though. Well, not leaning. I think he's going to win. I would love to see how he goes on the feet. I like to see that. But will it go to that? Probably not. I can see a submission, honestly, round 1 or 2. But I'm going to say
like
that
a guillotine
now.
Or something, like jump into a gilly. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
And Steve would be just like, "What?" Wonderboy would be shocked.
Yeah.
You know what? Because Brad's not here, and Best Bets is his baby. He loves it. And you know what? We're not going to do that in his stead. We're going to save that for our boy. But we are going to still. I think we can, as we go through this card, we'll make some picks. I think as we go, and I like where we're headed because we're kind of doing that anyway. So I mean, so far, you know, we don't have to be unanimous, but you know, I had Ian Garry on Vicente Luque. I think he's going to finish him, maybe in the second. Now this fight, I wish that Wonderboy would take it because I love him to death. But it's just one of those things, man. When I watch the way he had to deal with Gilbert Burns, for instance, I believe, call me crazy, that Shavkat is a more evolved, better striker and better grappler for MMA than Gilbert. Gilbert's a great jiu-jitsu specialist. Don't get me wrong. You put a gi on him, even no gi, he's top of the food chain. He's really good, especially considering that he puts so much of his energy into MMA. Usually when guys do that, the jits falls off. Like their jiu-jitsu gets kind of like, all right, it's not as good. It's not as high level. That dude still brings it on the mats. But Shavkat's grappling kind of reminds me of those Dagestani boys where it's specific for the cage. He clamps people in half guard. He doesn't want to progress. He likes to stay there and land shots. You know, you free one hand, that Dagestani handcuff, and it's over. I think he takes him out. But there's a little element of this in MMA, and we're going to see it with the Volk fight and Ilia Topuria. I'm so excited to see how that fight goes, because there's this whole thing where it's like when somebody's like coming up, nobody realizes this was the guy. And then by the time everybody jumps on the train, he's got like 4 fights left before he's brain damaged. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm at with Shavkat, is like, this dude's put together a lot of good fights. And, you know, he started taking some damage in the Jeff Neal fight. He'll probably take some shots here unless he can get it to the ground super quickly.
Yeah.
But how much does he have left in the tank after he, you know, finally gets to the title contention? It's like, remember Anthony Pettis? They put this guy on the Wheaties box. He got on the Wheaties box, and that was like a decade ago at lightweight. People don't realize how big of a like cultural jump that is. And he lost his next fight. UFC was probably like, God damn it. Like, it's so hard in this sport. Even in tennis, like they try to do that with, you know, Serena Williams, or they do it with Carlos Alcaraz or something like that, where it's like, this is the guy, and then he loses. You can't bank on it. It's just, there's too many ways to lose. But after this fight, like I could see Wonder Boy maybe doing some fun fights, which makes me sad. Did you see MVP? Looks like he made the choice to PFL. What do you make of that? You think that was a mistake? What do you think?
I mean, if the UFC was interested in him, I think he should have taken it. You know, I don't know the details of what happened, but if the UFC is interested in you, which they act interested in you, and you know they want you, which I don't know if I know they hinted that they did. I mean, you gotta take the bait. You know what I mean? You gotta do it. So
legacy.
That could have made some good fights too. I mean, he had to fight for a title, but I'm sure PFL offered him some good money though.
I think maybe that was the clincher, because like he came and then there was that talk about Holland. He was going to have Holland fight. Like if you brought, like I could map out the whole thing. If you're Joe Silva, well, Joe Silva's not here anymore, but let's say we're one of the matchmakers now, Sean Shelby. You think about it, like you bring MVP into the UFC, Kevin Holland versus MVP, you know, MVP versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Adesanya. I mean, there's some crazy stuff in there that's like some style matchups that we could see. But you know what? I'm not them. I don't invest my money. And maybe they looked at his age, just like Wonder Boy. Maybe they say, you know what, this guy's like 37, 38, you know, like how much more do we get out of this guy? And we're going to give him a guaranteed 8 and we can't cut him. A lot of guys, they do that. They say, you can't cut me if I lose consecutive. But anyway, enough on that fight. We're moving up. We're moving up the card to a title fight. Brandon Raw Dog Royval versus Alessandro Pantoja. Woo! This is about to be two boys slinging. And there was the first fight. You got a chance to watch it?
I watched the highlights, yeah.
Okay.
So you saw through it a little bit at work, you know, had on the other screen watching through it.
Like Minority Report. It's like, all right, I got all college footballs over here. He sold out really hard in that fight. Long story short, that was my only point to mention the fight, is that he kind of came after him, was like, he fought with this rage and he came after him. I believe he hurt him a couple times as well. But Pantoja was like, I'm going to weather this storm. I'm going to throw a body triangle on you, wear you out, and take your back and choke you. And that's what makes Pantoja so special, man. This guy, watch his fight with Manel Cape, who I'm so high on. That was an interesting fight right there. It's like, ooh, he showed you how to deal with that kind of technique and stuff. And that being said, Cape was a little bit trepidatious there. I don't think he was fully cutting loose like he was in that Daniel Lacerda fight, which was my favorite fight of the year last year. But this one, all I'm hearing from Brandon, and we love Brandon on this show, okay? And I've been hearing a lot of him saying that he's trying to get disciplined, and that he learned something from that fight is not to go so crazy and sell out to the point where you leave yourself open. And I think we had actually discussed this a little beforehand about Dan Hardy on his show making a pick. And he was kind of pointing to the fact that Pantoja really got into a crazy brawl in that last fight with Moreno. And, you know, is he going to be susceptible to that? Is it possible that maybe he's a little bit older? You know, he's been through some wars. It's been a long trip up here to the title. Maybe he gets into a war with this young kid and this kid's not as diminished on his chin. He gets clipped. Or does he just stay in the pocket, stay composed, and ended up just having a power difference? I think he's a little more powerful. I don't know if I'm crazy there. But this weight class, man, Look at what happened last weekend. Davison Figueiredo moves up to a whole nother weight class. He's got all of his power still. He put it on Font. He dominated Rob Font. And that shows you that the talent level that's at these weight classes, these little dudes. Now, of course, you know, I'm being a homer here because I'm also one of the little dudes. So I always believe we're the best. But the truth is,
you're not that little, though. You're not flyweight little. I hope you're not. It means you've been fasting way too much, buddy.
I got a cut to get down there.
Yeah.
I got some work to do. But I think that, like, when you're at that size, you do have to learn how to use technique, and you have to learn how to leverage a lot of things, and you have to be more well-rounded. Sure. So these fights, don't be surprised. And I know there's not a lot of storyline with these guys. You'll notice we're talking about technique. We're not really talking about drama because that's not really the way they are. But don't be surprised if this is a standout of the night, just action-wise. And that's the same thing. Any day of the week, if you're bored and you're an MMA fan, go throw on one of those Davison Figueiredo, Brandon Moreno fights and tell me you're not entertained. The speed at which they're scrambling, the things that are going on, it's nonstop. Go back and watch the old DJ title run in UFC that everyone said was so boring. It's so exciting. It's excellent. The shit he's doing looks like a video game, and the speed he's going at. So on this fight, I'm going to go crazy.
You got
Brandon.
Okay. All right.
I think he's going to surprise people by his hands. I think he might hurt him. And I think maybe in the first or second, we might see a surprise, a dethroning. I think we might see it. Something about it. I don't know. I like what I see from him. I like the discipline I see. I like it. So I'm riding with Raw Dog.
Dude, I mean, I was kind of leaning towards him too. There's something about his mojo watching the embedded. I just feel like, and like I could go into technical why, you know, I don't know this. It's hard. It's hard with flyweight guys because these guys go back and forth, right? You like you were saying, they have to be universal fighters. They have to strike. They have to grapple. What I'm hoping though is before I kind of give my pick, I hope and I slightly predict that this is going to be kind of like Pantoja and Brandon Moreno. It's going to be back and forth. It's going to be a lot of striking, a lot of maybe one round's more scrambling. You know, the scrambles from Figueiredo and Moreno in those fights, like those were crazy. Like I think their last fight. So I'm hoping we can see some of that. These scrambles, these strike fests. But I think it's more like a heart pick. I'm leaning Royval. I can't tell you why. I just feel like his mojo, watching the embedded, watching the behind the scenes, you know, checking out his Instagram. I wish I could tell you why, but I'm feeling a Royval pick. I don't know.
A surprise, an upset, which you know this. Like if you bet and you watch like say weigh-ins, you should watch them. If you're a hardcore degenerate and you really want to bet, you got to watch the weigh-ins, watch the way they look, how their dehydration is looking. There have been some times, man, if we were smart, we would have watched Adesanya the way he looked so kind of listless going into that fight with Strickland, where it looked like he didn't even want to be there. And I'm not making excuses for Izzy, okay? He's a grown man. But I just personally, just throwing it out there, I don't think it was the true representation of how good he can be. That's not the same guy who deaded Pereira. That's not the same guy. It's like something was out there. He underestimated his opponent. He should never have done that. That's on him. Can't do that to Strickland. He's there. He's in your face. But yeah, there's something intangible, right? Sometimes. Is that what you're saying? Like you can feel something, like it's almost like an upswing.
Yeah, I think it kind of matches like the vibe that we've had this year with these fights. Like, you know, it's not like these upsets. I don't know. I'm just feeling it. I feel like Pantoja, like we've seen his past fights, he's susceptible to things. It's not like he's this perfect. So, you know, this perfect fighter. I think we proved this year there really is no such thing as a perfect fighter, right? Like this year's proved that, like with all these upsets that we've had. But if I had to pick an upset on this card, especially the main card, like I'm leaning towards this one. I know the lines are pretty close. It's like plus 145, like minus 165, something like that. I had to go back and check. So it's not like a crazy upset. Like this, the odds are really close, right? Leaning towards Pantoja, but that's still an upset, right? So yeah, I don't know. I feel comfortable with that pick.
Especially after, like, look at what happened to us with the two Seans. You know,
Yeah.
double whammy of Wonder Bread white boys, you know, just taking the titles. It's unbelievable. Which, speaking of Wonder Bread white boys, does it get any worse than Colby Covington? Listen, we love him. I actually think that Colby is one of those guys whose gimmick has strongly overshadowed the skills. And I don't think people go back and think and remember, okay, this guy is legit. Okay. I don't care what anybody says. You know, Kamaru Usman had serious trouble with him. Guess he was able to finish him. The second fight was even closer. But that was also a very, you know, a lesser diminished model of Kamaru Usman. Kamaru is a freak, man. He's a freak athlete. Such an interesting fighter. He's figured out a way to maximize on all of his gifts. And I wanted to read this about the main event because we got Leon Edwards versus Colby. And if there's one guy who completely understands these guys in and out, it's going to be Kamaru Usman. So he said, you know, regarding this fight, he said, when you've been gone for a year and some change, certain guys react differently to that. That's what scares me with Colby Covington. If it wasn't for that time, I'm going 100% with Colby Covington. But Leon Edwards believes that he's the best welterweight on the planet right now. And just for that dumb confidence alone, I'm going to go with Edwards. What do you make of that?
I like that. I did not hear that quote, and I was leaning towards Colby, but that hits it spot on. This fight, it's been a year and 9 months since he last fought Jorge. You know, he's coming off a win, thankfully. It's not he's coming off a loss, but I mean, a year and 9 months off fighting. I mean, what do you think about that?
Can I play devil's advocate here? So everybody said that, you know, he's only beat old guys, right? What about Leon Edwards? He beat an older, diminished Kamaru Usman.
That's true, yeah.
He went to a split decision with Gunnar Nelson, guys. And I'm not hating. I actually love Gunnar Nelson. I'm one of those heads that still likes him a lot. I always enjoyed him. But not the youngest guy, and also not like, you know, a 5-tool fighter that has elite striking and has all this stuff. His main game is getting to the clinch and getting to the ground and using his jiu-jitsu. He's, you know, I think he's from Iceland. He used to train out of Connor's camp, Gunnar. But, you know, but let's go back. Hold on. What are the other fights then? What are some more recent fights from Leon? So, okay, so we've got Cowboy. I love Cowboy, but he's not a young guy. I mean, the guy had like 40 fights or something at that point. Then he's got Nate Diaz. Oh, the master of footwork, Nate Diaz. You know, he's got good boxing, but
he almost took him out. He almost took him out too.
He almost did it, which for that exact reason, that's what's got me worried about Leon, because I went back and I watched the second fight against Kamaru and I was so impressed. That being said, there was a little bit of grab on the glove, a little grabbing of the cage here and there. Was a little dirty stuff. It was a little dirty stuff. However, Kamaru also gets a little dirty at times. And I don't know if he'll admit it, but I've seen him laugh about it at times. A little bit with the nut shot stuff back and forth with him from some fighters. It gets weird where he's kind of playing the game. And listen, if you ain't cheating, you're trying. Okay? If you ain't cheating, you're not trying. So it's okay. I get it. There's a lot of shit that's on the line here. But like, there's so much to weigh. And because we haven't seen Colby, it's like, what do we think? Like, what is there to base this off of? As his last fight is against, you know, a weather-worn, you know, Jorge Masvidal in Miami in front of an electric crowd. He did get caught with a shot in that fight and wobbled, but luckily was okay. Colby made it back. He came back from the brink. One thing that's got me positive about Colby, okay, because there's a lot of negative stuff. One thing that's got me positive about where he's at is he's been already there for a while. I know you're talking about the embeddeds. You know, he's in his cringe crib, his Airbnb place there where he's hanging out. But I think he's been at altitude preparing. And a scary thought, man. Like with his cardio, being at altitude for a couple of weeks, maybe a month, getting ready, how does that affect the fight? What do you think?
I think big time. I mean, Leon and Usman did fight in Salt Lake in the first fight. So we know Leon has great cardio as well. So they kind of play devil's advocate to that. It's like we've already seen how Leon can compete in altitude. We saw on that fight card that people were struggling. I don't know if you remember that, but that was a big thing, you know, for the Leon and Usman fight. I was like, okay, is L2 gonna struggle, make these fighters struggle? But I don't know, man. I think Kobe's locked in for this fight. Like the fact that he's going to Colorado, I think that's where he's at, Colorado, in the altitude or wherever he's at in the altitude. There's something about him. I know. I like the last fight we were talking about. I wish I could go into technical, like a technical way of why I think he's going to win. I mean, I just feel like it's his time. I feel like it's time. I feel like it's his time to beat the champion and win the title. I think this is his chance. Now, from the technical side of things, I think he has what it takes to beat Leon. He needs to play safe. Use it. He can box. We know he's a good boxer. We've seen him in Striking Fest. He's pretty good at that. His takedown defense, his takedowns. He needs to make it a boring fight. Get Leon against the cage. Maybe no fence grabs this time, like you were saying. Get him against the fence. Like make it kind of boring. This might be a boring main fight. I hope it's not, but some people are going to be a little disappointed, especially with all the trash talk Thursday when this fight card gets super hyped. People are going to be like someone's getting knocked out first, second round. They're going to be showing the highlights of Leon knocking out Usman. But this could go down to decision. It could be close. The way Colby fights, the cardio, he knows he doesn't have to finish it early, right? So if you don't have to finish it early, you have good wrestling, you have good striking, you're going to play it safe. You're going to listen to your coaches. You're going to like analyze how Leon is. And Leon does the same thing. The last fight, that went to decision. They're going to feel each other out probably the first 3 rounds. Now, do I wish there's a knockout, submission, a finish within the first 3 rounds? I mean, yeah, like as a fan, you hope that. I can definitely see these guys feeling each other out. You got to realize when people feel each other out in these fights, we've seen it. I can't really make an example because it happens a lot, but after the first 3 fights, like it comes down to those 2 rounds. Like, it's good, that's where like Kobe could come out with this win, is just by maybe dominating on the ground the last 2 rounds or something like that. So that's kind of how I see the fight going. I got Kobe in this fight.
Wow. Making somebody like maybe he makes the adjustments in the championship rounds.
Yeah, because if you can make those 3 fights, those 3 rounds super even, that comes down to like those last 2 rounds, right? So it's like if Kobe can steal maybe 1 round in the beginning and then maybe steal those last 2 rounds, 3-2, I think I could see something like that happening.
I'm just completely lost in this fight because I'm trying to balance that. Remember how you were saying earlier today, you want to go with your guts and you don't want to listen to so many people like voices. If you go online, everyone's got their own take. You got Chael, you got Dan Hardy, you got all these podcasts that people have on MMA media. It's like everyone's got their pick and they get in your mind and they kind of like, you just got in my mind. Just listening to you to do that, I'm like, man, you just sold me on it. Like you sold me. And I can see it happening as long as he doesn't get sucked into staying on the outside. Like you can't stay on the outside with Leon. Yeah. And Leon has the power if he would. I think I'm going to agree with you. I think I'm going to ride on this with you. I think I'm going to take this pick. And here's why, though. Because Leon has this habit of fighting to the level of his opponent. You notice? Like he finished Kamaru the first time. And I'm not going to say it was not intentional. He threw that kick, but he didn't think it was going to do that. That's not the kind of fighter he is. He's not the kind. Let's be real. And no offense to Nate Diaz. I love the Diaz brothers. No offense. Please don't take it that way. But I believe Leon could have finished Nate at numerous points during that fight if he had poured it on and showed him that, hey, I'm at the title level. You're a vet. You don't belong in this cage with me. I'm the next guy. And he won the fight. But like you said, Nate rocked him in the last round and points at him and laughs because he stayed in there. He lets guys back into the fight. Watch his fight with Cowboy. Cowboy was pretty diminished at that point. Listen, Cowboy still gets some licks in. And Cowboy stays in that fight the whole time. I think it's a 5-round fight. And with Colby, man, do you really want to let him get to 5 rounds? Do you want him to be there? Because that's not like the way to get rid of him is with power, with intense power and striking. Like that's the recipe. And unfortunately, Jorge did not have enough juice left when he caught him with that shot. He couldn't follow up. He was just too beaten. That's fine. But if Colby slips up, he can get deaded at any moment. But what you're saying, I could see it turn. He just keeps getting like mat return, just keeps getting dragged back down to the mat. Leon, I mean, it may be just kind of like a lot of cumulative hammer fists and strikes around the side, boom, boom. Nothing like maybe earth shattering, but we'll get there. But when these fights are over, there's going to be a lot to think about, the what's next. And I know we were talking about the welterweight division, and being a grappling nerd, and that's to give audience a little bit of context. That's how all of us on this show got to know each other, was from jiu-jitsu. That's where we met. And that's kind of the basis of all of this, is that's our base. That's where we understand fights from a lot of times, from a grappling perspective. And I would love to kind of see welterweight. It's always kind of been that way. You had John Fitch, you had GSP, you had Jake Shields, you had all these different guys. BJ, they were really good grapplers at this weight class. And I know we mentioned Bilal and Sean Brady earlier. I could really see, if Colby takes this, there are some fun fights for him that he can go down the road and say, maybe let me take some of those. Imagine him and Bilal. Whoa, I don't know what to do there. It's like very similar.
I mean, the marketing, not that Leon is not marketable, but I mean, imagine Colby as champ. Sean Strickland too. You got Sugar Sean. I mean, you got 3 champs that are like super marketable. Not that other, I mean, you know what I mean? I like the other guys just as much, but hey, from a fan perspective, we got some marketability. We got some people we can market.
It's cash, and it's people get excited what they're going to say, and like that's like this press conference, everyone's hyped. And before we wrap, just wanted to bring up a little thing that we missed in the news cycle, actually. So we won't spend too much time on this, but just a call out to our boy Jamahal Hill. Listen, he got in hot water with a DV charge. That's been publicized. It's out there. Everyone's seen it. I just wanted to put this out there from our show, is that we have a really bad habit in our culture of dropping news and with no consequence, just blasting stuff out there, right? The town crier. And when I first saw that notice on Instagram, I saw that pop up. I thought, oh man, DV, wow. And my heart sunk. I said, oh man, I wonder if it's a significant other, or, a spouse or whatever it is. That's hard. It's really hard to hear about somebody that, that you do care about and that you do think is a pretty good guy. He's shown a lot of character, honestly. He seemed like a pretty cool guy. And you have more questions. Okay. I'm not saying you're going to disown the guy, but you have more questions now. You want to follow up. Okay, what is this? And what's interesting is the more you read about the story, you start to see that, he was doing work, restoring, I don't know if it was a family house or something, but they were dealing with some kind of messed up house. Him and his brother, they were doing like demo on it and remodeling, and they got into an argument. It got heated. It got physical. And, Jamal's a professional fighter. He levels him with a couple of shots, apparently knocks his own brother's teeth out a little bit. And don't get it twisted. We are not making excuses for that. That's not what I'm here to say. What I'm here to say is that in our culture, there is not really a lot of damage control. Like, it's not fair. For instance, when the New York Times used to publish something about somebody that might have been defamation, libel, slander, whatever you want to say, they would do that, and it would be on the first page, right in your face. So-and-so did this. Are we ready to cancel him and hate him forever? And then maybe 2 months later, there's some research. The person fights back. We find out maybe the whole story was actually BS. And then the retraction is on page 13 in tiny little letters on a grain of rice. So the whole point for me here is like, let's think before we criticize. I'm not saying what he did is right, but it's not the first impulse. Like, what we thought it might have been was actually not what it was. And we don't really know the story. We don't know what they've been through and why they had that fight with each other. It's not my business. But it's just like, we're so quick to disown guys, when at the end of the day, it's like, we need to give them their chance to speak and like explain it. And like, let's figure out what's going on. So Jamahal, we wish you the best. And I'm excited to see you come back and hopefully challenge for the title, because that Pereira matchup would be absolute fire. And I don't want to see you get, waylaid and kept to the side because of something like this. So we're hoping that he comes back quick. That's all I got to say on that one.
Yeah, I think we're moved past this, hopefully, and we'll see a good title fight coming up soon. But yeah, that pretty much does it for our main card breakdown. There are a lot of there's this card is stacked from top to bottom pretty much. There's a lot of good prelim fights. We didn't really get to go over, kind of running out of time, but we are super excited for the Josh Emmett and Bryce Mitchell. Bryce Mitchell coming in as a late replacement. So just saying, if you're watching this, make sure to hop on your TV early. Probably going to be on ESPN Plus or ESPN, whatever they're going to do. Definitely watch those fights. That's the main fight in the prelims. Josh Emmett and Bryce Mitchell. That's going to be a good one.
Who you got?
I got Bryce, man. I think
Nice.
he's got the momentum. Emmett's kind of falling off a little bit. If he can keep, but Bryce Mitchell's super chinny. I mean, we saw that in the fight before this, before he just had one. If Josh gets a good fight, he's got hands, man. So he could definitely take Bryce out with one punch.
He's got dogs. He's got dogs in his hands, but if he can avoid that, if Bryce can just get right in, just drop him and get him on a double leg and just chain things together, he definitely has this thing in the bag. Yeah, big time.
Get out of there. Just get out of there without damage. But yeah, that pretty much does it for UFC 296. Breaking down the main card. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to check out our Instagram, YouTube at Spar Scene, and then at Spar Scene MMA Show. We have a couple interviews out with some fighters. We did one with Lydia Dethrone. She actually has some insight. She knows Ian Garry from the beginning of his career to now, also knows his wife. So we broke down kind of the drama going around that. So if you want to learn more about Ian Garry before the press conference, before he gets roasted about stuff, maybe you can see a different perspective with Lydia. Go ahead and check that out. That'll be linked down below, or just check out the channel. And then hopefully Sunday we're gonna do a breakdown of what happens. Hopefully it's a good card. We're gonna break down the fights from the night before, and then hopefully Brad's here. Hopefully he's not sick, so we can break down with the three of us. So make sure you guys check that out. Subscribe, like, if you're still watching. We'll see you next time.